as you know, at its 11th of February meeting, Sage said that it expected full school reopenings to increase the R rate by between 10% and 50%. How long before we get that data?
Well, firstly, the approach that we are taking has been very much informed by SAGE. This is a very cautious approach that was set out by the roadmap. It's the ability to ensure that we're able to analyse the data and look at it. But the reason it's been set out as a cautious approach is so that it's irreversible. And I think, like most of your listeners, and as a parent myself, I'm certainly very much looking forward for my children to be able to go back. This is our first step, the nation's first step out of lockdown, and we'll constantly look at the data. But the Prime Minister set out 4 clear tests about the continued rollout of the vaccine, the the effectiveness of a vaccine, but also how the NHS has been able to sort of cope with any uptick and also new variants. So we thought about this clearly, but the steps we're taking is to make sure that when schools go back, that they stay back and children are able to benefit from being in the classroom.
And when will you get that first sense of the impact of schools reopening? Is it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
Well, we expect to see that over the Easter holiday period. But again, the reason we're taking this cautious approach is so that the steps that we take are steps that will never be reversed, that children will remain in the classroom. The Prime Minister and I have said countless times education is our national priority. And we've always said schools will be the last to close and first to reopen. And that's very much what we're doing. And that's what we're going to be seeing tomorrow.
I get that. So we're not going to revisit full school reopening. That's very clear in your answers. But if the R rate does rise significantly, that may lead to a delay of further relaxation of other restrictions because it's the national priority to keep schools open.
Well, what we're seeing is actually a transformation in terms of how we beat COVID. So the main tool in terms of beating COVID has been locking the country down. Now that's been transformed and that's changing. So our weapons against COVID are changing from being locking the country down to using the vaccine and testing. And over the next few weeks, you're going to see a doubling of the number of vaccines that's available from 2 million a week to 4 million a week. We're already ahead of where so many people would have expected us to be. But this is the way that we're going to be able to unlock our nation. This is the benefit and the dividend of the work that's already been done. That means that children are going to be able to be back in the classroom and benefiting from being with their teachers and also with their friends as well.
But if the R rate, the reinfection rate, does increase, as the scientists expect it to, will there be any consequences to that on other sectors of society? Because that's the priority. So
it's so always a great challenge in the pandemic. But if we throw our minds forward 5 weeks' time, we probably are going to have seen literally millions more people have been vaccinated. Millions more people will have had their second vaccine. These people who are most likely to be hospitalised and those who are most likely and most at risk of dying as a result of COVID, which means that the government's cautious approach to the roadmap enables us to be able to be committed to that and delivering the opening that we said that we want to do. The first part of that, of course, is with schools. But this is why we've taken this cautious approach, because we do recognise that when we we do sort of do things differently out of lockdown, that will have a consequential effect. But the rollout of vaccine, the rollout of testing, all of this is about defeating this virus. Have every confidence that we can deliver on that.
The Prime Minister and the Health Secretary were clear that the reason for gaps between various stages of reopening is to look at the data and then see if it is safe for the next stage of reopening. But I'm trying to sort of find out whether you think there might be any delay in the next stage, but I think you're telling me no. I think you're saying...
We certainly would always hope that there would never be a delay in the next stage. This is why we've taken a cautious and pragmatic approach, and that's why we enter the full return of schools tomorrow with real confidence. And the 4 tests that the Prime Minister set out as part of a roadmap are very much there to ensure that we continue to protect the NHS in terms of its ability to deliver, but also protect the population. But over the next few weeks, you will literally see millions more people getting the vaccine, especially those ones who we covered off for population as are most likely to end up in hospital. We've taken these big, bold moves in terms of expanding that, not just to those who are over 60 who can get the vaccine, but those who are 56 to 59. And it's still a long way for a lot of people, but we're heading in the right direction, but we're heading in the right direction at quite some speed.
Okay. How should a secondary school teacher deal with a child who refuses for no good reason to wear a mask in class?
Well, firstly, we would encourage all children to be wearing masks within class in secondary schools. It's a really important part of one of the many different layers of protection that we're trying to put in school. And it's not just mask wearing, it's about different start times that children are coming in. It's making sure that year groups and small groups of children are bubbled up so there's not as much interaction. And of course, the big testing regime that we're rolling out. But we saw children wearing masks in communal areas between September and December. This worked very, very well. There's a high level of compliance. And in truth, children are very, very responsible. I know as a dad of a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old, they recognise they want to do everything they can do to protect their friends, protect their teachers, and protect their families. So I think there's a very sensible approach that young people will be taking, and I think we should give them real credit for that.
Okay. You're looking at how to enable and ensure that the school time that has been lost is made up in some way. You have spoken about a number of options like shorter summer holidays, 5-term academic years, longer school days. There's lots of things floating around. Have you discussed any of these proposals with the teaching unions?
So the reason that we are looking at what are the transformative measures that we can introduce in terms of our education system is we recognise that children have missed out during this pandemic. That's why we put £1.7 billion of additional support. But this is also why we've asked Sir Kevin Collins to work for us, look at the evidence-based solutions that can be transformative to a child's life and engage broadly, not just with trade unions, but also professional bodies, children, parents themselves, but most importantly, be guided by the evidence. What's going to make the biggest impact to children? What's going to help them catch up in terms of any lost learning? But most importantly, succeed all the way through their education, because it's not just about how we catch up on the disruption we've seen this year. What's equally so important is what more can we do to make sure our education system is world beating. After the Second World War, we transformed education. Out of this COVID pandemic, we will transform education again. And that's our commitment. But it's got to be about children and what's best for them.
Have you talked to the teaching unions? When was the last time you met them, for example, about any of these proposals?
I speak to the teaching unions very regularly. I had meetings just last week. We often discuss a broad range of subjects, including how we drive a transformation and reform within schools, because teachers are as committed to children getting the very best for every one of their pupils. And I speak, as someone who talks to teachers all the time and listen to them about how they're so incredibly focused on delivering best for the children who are in their stewardship.
Okay, let's look at the commitments that you've given on teachers' pay. You promised that the starting salary for teachers who start off will be £30,000 a year by next year. They're currently on £25,714. That promise for the starting salary for teachers at £30,000 by next year, that stands?
So the commitment on starting salary for teachers was by the end of this Parliament, and we're confident that we're able to deliver that for the £30,000 starting salary for newly qualified, for those teachers who have just qualified, and that was by the end of this Parliament. Last year we saw the largest pay increase for teachers since 2005, and we're very committed to delivering on the £30,000 starting salary by the end of this Parliament.
Will you make incremental steps towards that this year?
Well, this year there is a public sector pay freeze for all areas, with the exception of the NHS. In the last round of negotiations and discussion, as I say, it was one of the largest increases that we've seen, certainly since 2005. But this coming year, it will be frozen like the rest of the public sector.
And that's for the starting salary for teachers too. There'll be no increase.
That will be across the board. Yes.
Okay. Just want to talk to you briefly about the levelling up agenda. You will know that the latest figures from the Office for Students show that the proportion of white British pupils on free school meals who went on to higher education by the age of 19 was 16%. It was the lowest of any ethnic group other than Irish Traveller and Gypsy Roma. Now, you talked about this at the Tory party conference last year. You said it's a shocking disgrace. What sort of figure, if it's 16% now, what sort of figure of white British pupils on free school meals would you like to see going to university?
I want it to be fully reflective of the rest of society. I don't want to see differences emerging. It's probably the same reason that you and I both entered Parliament at the same time in 2010, because actually that sense of injustice, that sense of it being wrong, burns within both of our hearts, and it can't be right. And last year we made some real good progress, and universities are doing so much, but we need to do more. This is why we're currently consulting on really radical options, such as moving to post-qualifications assessment, so young people know what grades that they've got before they start applying for universities. Because sometimes, if your family haven't been to university before, no one in your family has, it's a really daunting experience. So if you know that you've got in the bag a set of grades, it means that you can be applying for the very best university for yourself. This is why we're boosting the career support that we're seeing in schools, because we want children, whatever their background, to be able to make the best choices. But it shouldn't always be about university. And this is why just a few weeks ago we launched probably the most radical set of reforms in post-16 education, looking at technical and vocational qualifications to make sure young people, whatever their background, have the very best choices. But we've got to change it. We are changing it. We're seeing the change, but it can never be fast enough, Gloria.
Ms. Williamson, good morning. It's Tom here.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Good, thank you very much. Let me ask you a couple of different things just quickly to wrap it up. Are you watching the Meghan and Harry interview tomorrow night?
Well, I will be in the House of Commons, so I'll probably be not sort of paying attention to the debate that's happening in the House of Commons, as you always do as well there. So you probably won't have time to.
Definitely ducked. Can I ask you this, though? It is, after all, Her Majesty's government. Her Majesty's going through a pretty hard time at the moment. Her nice-owned husband's in hospital. Her granddaughter by marriage is tearing what she can think is left of the royal family to pieces. Why aren't you defending her? Why isn't the government standing up for the Queen?
Well, the whole nation stands up for the Queen. The whole nation holds the Queen in the absolute highest of regard. But as you well know, government doesn't comment on matters within the royal family, and that's a long-established convention, and one that we'll continue to uphold.
She just looks quite a lonely figure at the moment. Do you not feel some sympathy for her?
Well, I think the whole nation is looking forward very much towards her jubilee that's so rapidly heading our way, and this will be a real important moment for the whole nation to come out in terms of celebrating an amazing reign that the Queen has had, and really celebrating her achievements. And that will all be part of our COVID recovery. It's all part
Okay.
of actually the nation coming back
You,
together.
you don't want to answer that question. I understand. Let me ask you another one. Are you worried about the cabinet reshuffle coming up this year and what it might have for your job prospects?
Well, Tom, you're a commentator, and it's always great to sort of hear the views of commentators. My focus is making sure that we deliver a full reopening. Schools tomorrow, children are back in school and really able to enjoy their time with their teachers, with their friends as well. So that's my sole focus. And after that, making sure we deliver the transformation of our education system. Part of what we've been
Okay, I
outlining.
understand your views on that. We discussed your views on that. You don't want to talk about the cabinet reshuffle either. But final question. What is it about you and your dark arts that prime ministers most fear? I mean, you had your critics, but you keep hanging on. You are one of life's great political survivors. Do you think Boris Johnson fears you?
Boris Johnson and myself, the Prime Minister and myself, have an incredibly sort of single mindset about actually what we want to deliver for children. And it's that commitment that the Prime Minister has that's meant that we've been able to deliver record funding levels into schools. And that commitment to transform our education system is such a shared passion, because the Prime Minister and myself both know that it's education that can best deliver levelling up. And it's great to be able to work with such a powerful Prime Minister that's so committed to the same agenda that I went into politics for.